Since I've been in Egypt, I've been working full-time as an intern for the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, or the UNHCR. It's based here in Cairo. And the UNHCR is in charge of ensuring the protection of refugees from arrest and deportation is their fundamental goal, to make sure that people who are fleeing from violence or persecution are not forced to go back to that situation. And it also tries to provide them with some basic services so that they can actually live in the country that is hosting them. And the third thing is it tries to find long-lasting solutions, which is called durable solutions, that will actually allow them to have some stability and have like a new way to start their life over again. There's 3 branches. The one I work in is registration, and it's the first one, and it is basically in charge of putting people into our computer system and giving them documents so that they can prove that they are recognized by our office and have the protection of our office so they can't be deported. And it gives them access to services from our partner organizations, and we can help them if they have their card get out of jail and things like that if they're wrongfully detained. And everyone is given documents when they arrive and do their registration interviews in Egypt. Though there are some ethnic groups we're not allowed to register, which is just problematic generally, but for all of the groups that we're allowed to register, everybody gets documents right away. The second branch of UNHCR is called RSD. It's Refugee Status Determination. And it's basically to determine whether or not a person falls under the definition of a refugee set by the 1951 Convention on the Status of Refugees, or the OAU, Organization for African Unity, 1961 Convention definition. And the 1951 Convention states that a refugee is a person who's fleeing from a well-founded fear of persecution based on race, religion, etc. And so it's really to figure out if this fear that this person is experiencing is well-founded, if they're going to be persecuted when they go back, like these kinds of things. And it's just to determine whether or not this person needs the protection of a second or third country rather than their own home country. And that's RSD. If they're accepted or recognized as a refugee, they're given blue refugee cards instead of the yellow asylum seeker cards, and are sometimes given resettlement interviews depending on the specific case, because not all people can be resettled, not all people go through resettlement interviews. And if they are not determined to be a refugee, they have 30 days to submit an appeal, which then they can resubmit their case and like add to it and try again. But the process lasts a really long time. And after that, if they're rejected a second time, they are no longer under the protection of UNHCR, or if they don't appeal within those 30 days, they're not under the protection of the UNHCR anymore. And this entire process can take like 2 or more years with appeals, because when you're given a registration interview, it's around 2 months from when you first come to the office. You get a registration interview, and then you get an RSD interview, and the RSD wait time is about a year. Then you have a month to appeal, and then you have another year waiting for your second RSD appointment, and then your second determination of your status, which also takes a while for them to do all the paperwork. The last branch of UNHCR is called RST, and it's resettlement. Because in Egypt it's very difficult for people to get citizenship, it's almost impossible, which it is in a lot of countries. And coupled with that, You also are not supposed to work. You're not supposed to be able to go to school unless you can like afford private school, which only a handful of people really can. And like all of these other barriers that are always in the way of refugees leading like full and free lives are really big problems in Egypt, and especially because of the fact that so many refugee groups are from sub-Saharan African countries. And as with all countries and all refugee situations, racism is inherently a problem, and it is here just like everywhere else. So a lot of people want to be resettled. There's 45,000 people of concern in Egypt, and they all want to be resettled. And it's just not feasible to actually resettle that many people, because Europe, the United States, Canada, and Australia can only take so many people in, and they only want to take so many people in. And so RST is there to determine whether or not a person has a very specific problem living in where they cannot live in this country, their country of asylum, anymore. Like they have for some reason they have an important like danger or like a medical problem or something of this nature that they just cannot live in this country anymore. So then they have to be resettled. And this process can take up to 10 years, just the resettlement. I've had people come to the office that I've talked to. They said, like, you know, help me with resettlement, and like I've been waiting for phone calls, I've been waiting for people for 10 years, and nobody said anything, and they just keep telling me to wait, and all this stuff, and it's terrible. It takes a really, really long time, because you have to apply to each country, and then if they reject you, you gotta apply again, and it's just a really long process, bureaucratic process. Most of the refugees that come to Egypt are coming from like Sudan or South Sudan, Eritrea, Somalia, Ethiopia, Iraq, or Syria. And there's also Libyans, of course, but we're not allowed to register them because the government says that they'll take care of them and they won't deport them. And then Palestinians, because the government wants them to stay and fight for Palestine, is what I've been told. And these groups do not get asylum seeker protection. We also work very closely with two NGOs that we are basically partners with. One is called Amira. It's a British organization that helps give legal aid and legal advice to people, and it also helps them with their interviews and writing their applications and all of these things, writing their claim and all of that kind of stuff. And then there's Caritas that gives medical and social just aid. So they actually distribute money to people and help them find apartments and like all these kinds of things. And so those two organizations are really important for the refugee communities here. And there are, as I said before, 3 durable solutions that the UNHCR tries to implement in different cases. First one we already talked about is resettlement, and it's really difficult to do because the resettlement countries don't want to take in that many people. But there's also repatriation, voluntary repatriation, which is sending refugees home, or local integration, which is trying to like allow people to get citizenship and have a normal life, and for instance like live out the rest of their lives in Egypt, because the goal is to make it so that they can actually have like a stable place to start over, because when they come here right now everything's really in flux and they don't know how long they're going to stay here, they don't know what it's going to be like in a year in their home country, they don't know if they're going to get resettled, and so like it's really hard to build a life in that kind of a situation where you're just kind of in limbo. But there's so many problems in Egypt with actual like local integration, like there are in a lot of countries, that's not really an option. And a lot of people who are fleeing situations, they're fleeing from long-term problems in their countries, which are not probably going to be solved instantly. Like, for instance, in Iraq, people have been fleeing for the past 10 years, and the situation's probably not going to get that much better. Same thing in Somalia. It's 20 years of civil conflict. In Sudan, same thing. Like, several decades of conflict, and now that the two, South Sudan and Sudan, split, they're still fighting. So all of these problems are continuous and they're long term, and it's really not feasible to consider sending people back to that situation, sending people back to Darfur, back to Mogadishu. Like, it's not a good idea. So it really only leaves resettlement, which is the last possible option the UNHCR looks for. And we obviously can't resettle everybody that needs to be resettled, but protracted conflicts are things that are sending people here, so it puts us in a really tight spot, and it puts the refugees here in a really tight spot. My job has mainly been at UNHCR to take applications for registration appointments and applications for card renewals and processing those applications. And I was at the beginning allowed to go to the gate and talk to people and take their stuff, ask them questions, counsel them, and help them. But because of now security concerns, I'm not allowed to go talk to the applicants. I can talk to them through like bulletproof glass, but I can't go talk to them. And so I basically sit at a desk and give them appointments to come back and pick up their new cards and take their expired cards, or to come in and have their registration interview. And I'm also doing some other like statistical analysis for the organization, mainly on Iraqis and Syrians, because there's differing flows of people coming in. And I've done a couple reports on Syrians and Iraqis that have been registered recently. Yeah, UNHCR is a very interesting place, especially the one here in Cairo. I've heard that other ones are not really like ours, which gives me hope. But if I have time, I'll do another video blog that talks about what I think about this entire internship that I'm experiencing right now, because like I'm a model UN kid. Like in high school and in college, I've just been all about model UN, but then like coming to the UN has not been a hopeful experience at all. But I think my next video blog, because the elections are happening on Wednesday, I'm going to talk about what I think about these elections and keep everybody up to speed on what has been happening in these very, very dramatic Egyptian elections that I don't know if you guys have been keeping up on, but they're great. So that's going to be my next video blog. So I'll see you all again soon, hopefully.